I think it's important for us to do kind of our takeaways from that game as we move forward here and we get ready for the Cowboy game coming up this Sunday, which could be a win in your in-game depending on what happens on Sunday Night Football. You guys know the deal already. Giants need to beat Dallas. Philly needs to beat Washington. And that's how the Giants get into the playoffs. So, Lance, to me, I just think it was a really disappointing loss, and it kind of followed a trend of the last 3 games where the Giants, have lost by significant margins. And it hasn't just been points, so you can point to, red zone, third down, situational football, or turnovers. They've been outgained by more than 400 yards over the course of these last 3 games, and they've been down by 2 scores or more in the third quarter in all of these games. So they haven't necessarily been close. And I wrote this in Cover 3. I tweeted out earlier yesterday where, everyone's talking about playoff machinations and everything. And right now, Lance, I don't care about that because if the Giants don't start playing better football in all 3 phases of the game, offense, defense, and special teams, none of this is going to matter. None of these calculations matter. Sunday Night Football is not going to matter because the Giants aren't going to beat Dallas. So they need to start playing better football for any of the stuff we're talking about to matter.
Yeah, I've always emphasized this, John, and I know we've fielded calls over the weeks, and they lay out all these different scenarios if this team loses. If you want to back your way into the playoffs, hey, that's fine. Personally, I'm a believer your team should be playing its best football as the playoffs start up. And right now, the Giants are not playing their best football. You're not playing your best football when you score a combined 26 points in the last 3 games. And that's why, to your point, John, a lot of these last few contests have been lopsided because they've dug themselves in an early hole. They fell behind. Now, all of a sudden, they have to be very heavy on the passing game. They have to abandon the run. You're not a balanced offense. And the Giants right now are not built to have their quarterback throw 40-some-odd times. Number one, you put yourself at risk for more turnovers, which fortunately they avoided against the Ravens, but you just don't have the luxury of time. You can't put together a 10-play drive for 85 yards and run the ball 7 of those 10 plays because you're milking too much clock. And that, unfortunately, has been the script that the Giants have followed. Then, with respect to their defense, you can't get off the field on third down. I mean, that to me was the most telling statistic, John. If you go back to Sunday's game against Baltimore, Baltimore was 8 of 11. Baltimore on 10 of those 11 third downs faced downs of 4 yards or less. Well, Why was that, John? Because they were pounding the football so effectively on first and second down. They were getting these big chunks that they didn't have to all of a sudden dig deep into their bag of tricks to try to convert a 3rd and 10 consistently or 3rd and 7 even on those third down scenarios. And that puts your defense in a very precarious spot. And the defense certainly takes responsibility for that. I don't think it was necessarily anything the offense did, but they ran the ball 40 times. So the volume jumps out. Baltimore is able to jump out to a lead and then ride what they have their identity based on, which is the run game. But let's take it a step further, John. 22 of the 40 runs were for 5 yards or more. And I know you're more of a 10-yard or more guy. I get that. But 5 yards or more, John, means that you're pretty much setting yourself up for half a first down that you have to complete if you get about 5 yards a carry. And they finish with over 6 yards a carry. So more than half of the runs put themselves in a situation where you now only have to get 5 more yards. I mean, that is a ridiculous number. And they had a few 10-yard runs or more, too. So the inability to stop the run game put the Giants' defense in a position where there was no way they were going to get out of that, knowing that your offense has scored about 10 points. That's the barometer number in each of the last 3 games. And you can tell me all you want about the Cowboys' defense is not as good as Baltimore and they're not as opportunistic, even though Dallas has been very effective in takeaways over the last few games. John, the bottom line is if the offense continues to score 7, 6, 13 points, it really doesn't make a difference who the opponent is.
Yeah, and this was a different way for the defense to struggle. We haven't really seen a team just win against them at the line of scrimmage and pound it right down their throats the whole game. That's what Baltimore did. That's how they won this game. I know a lot of people on the postgame show, Lance, on Sunday called up, oh, they got to go get away from the zone defense and all this stuff. If you guys think the pass defense was the reason the Giants lost that game on Sunday, you weren't paying attention. You just weren't. To your point, Lance, with the 5+ yard runs, how about this? The Giants did not have one play on defense for negative yardage.
Yeah.
They didn't have one tackle for loss or one sack. I don't know if I've ever seen that before.
Crazy.
I don't know if I've ever seen that before. So the Ravens were never put into disadvantageous positions in terms of down and distance. And they were just able to run the ball, whether it was Lamar Jackson or Gus Edwards or J.K. Dobbins, again and again and again. The Giants didn't have a pass breakup in the game, Lance. I've never seen a game where the team did not register a quarterback hit, did not register a tackle for loss, a sack, or a pass breakup. I've never seen that before. They gave up 430 yards in the game. And I did a hit for one of our affiliates up in Syracuse earlier today, and they kind of asked me, John, well, what's been the difference between that winning streak that they had in the middle of the year and the 3-game losing streak now? And I got a little pushback on it, but I'll explain my point here. I said the difference is the defense, and they said, well, hold on a second. The team's not scoring points. You made that point too, Lance, and I said, no, I understand. If you want to know what the biggest issue is with the team that they have to get fixed, it's the offense. But the difference is the defense played so well during that winning streak, it hid and covered up the problems with the offense. The offense didn't score a point in the first half against Seattle. They were shut out.
Yeah, it was 6-0.
5. Right, wasn't
no,
it
5,
5-0?
excuse me. That's right. Yeah, the safety.
Yeah, that stupid safety.
That's true.
So they were in that game because of the defense. If Seattle makes a couple more plays and they're up 17-0 at halftime instead of 5-0, guess what? That game follows the same exact script as the last 3. They didn't score a lot of points against Washington. They didn't score a lot of points against Philadelphia. They didn't score a lot of points against Cincinnati. But the defense kept the offense in the game, to your point, so they didn't become one-dimensional. And they also forced takeaways.
Yeah, that's the big
Which
key.
put the offense into positions. I don't remember the number. I did it a couple weeks ago. Almost half the Giants' points during that winning streak were points scored off of turnovers. That's a huge difference. They're not getting those now, which is why, to your point, Lance, we say this all the time, right? You can't rely on takeaways to win games because they're fluky, and it's something that's not reliable game to game. Well, that's what we're seeing these last 3 games. So I'm not blaming the defense. The defense can only do so much when your offense, to your point, Lance, has scored 2 touchdowns in 3 weeks. It's hard to win games that way. But they were winning games because of the defense before, and frankly, because the competition's gotten a lot better. That Seattle game pushed aside. That, I think, is the anomaly in the conversation. They have not been able to do that the past 3 weeks. And frankly, that's not a sustainable way to do things over a long period of time, which is what we tried to, I think, point out on this program, and some fans gave us some pushback on that. But we were trying to say that winning that way might not be sustainable, and it's proven not to be. So we'll see if they can turn the ball over more, make some more plays on defense, score some more points on offense against one of the weaker defenses they faced all year, and we'll see if they can change the pattern here. But those things are what has to change if the Giants want to beat Dallas this week, and it really is that simple.
Well, also keep in mind, remember, it was the Cowboys that scored a season-high 37 points against the Giants. And that was the most points that the Giants have allowed. Now, granted, both of these teams have changed since that early season game in terms of personnel. Dallas, you can argue, is starting to play much better football because they're protecting the ball on offense, which had been an issue early in the season. So, I don't know how much we could take away from that, but Dallas is more than capable of putting points on the board compared to the Giants. I wholeheartedly agree with you, John, and I even brought that up on the Giants Radio Network postgame show, that the takeaways was a huge difference maker during the 4-game win streak because, look at the numbers here, just to expand upon your point. They played Washington in Week 9. John, they had 5 takeaways in that game. Peppers had a fumble recovery. Harper had a fumble recovery. Martinez an interception. Peppers an interception. Logan Ryan an interception. If you remember, the Giants only won that game by 3 points.
Yeah, Lance,
Alex Smith, right, was picked off on each of the last 2 drives when Washington had an opportunity for, at worst, a game-tying field goal to send it to overtime.
I want to reinforce that for a second. I had Kyler Fackrell on the Giants Huddle, which you guys should go check out. We have a lot of great episodes up there. And I didn't even ask him the question. And I asked him a generic question about takeaways, and he goes, yeah, by the way, we turned over Washington 5 times in that game. We expect to win a game where you win the turnover battle by 5 by a lot more than 3 points. So that's not just us saying that. That's the damn players saying that, okay?
100%. Yeah. Well, that's why you have to look at the fact that even the players understand takeaways come in bunches. You don't just sign up and you say, today we're going to get 2 takeaways. We're going to start with 2 takeaways. It'll be a bonus if we get 3 or 4. It doesn't work that way. So there's no doubt about it. So that game jumps out to me. They had 5. Okay, the Eagles game was even. Both teams played clean football. The Giants defense was able to come through with big stop after big stop. The Eagles did not convert 1 third down. Okay, so that's a game that I don't think they were necessarily covering up any issues, John. Then you go to the Bengals game. Bengals game, they had 3 takeaways. Remember, Cincinnati had a kickoff return for a touchdown, and then Alex Erickson returns a punt right at midfield. All the Bengals have to do now is get 20 yards, and then Randy Bullock could come out and kick a game-winning field goal. Jabal Sheard comes through with the strip sack, game over. Huge play, huge turning point. It took that to seal up that game. And then the Seahawks game, well, they got 2 takeaways in that game. They were able to get a Nico Leilos fumble recovery and a Darnay Holmes interception. And to your point, you mentioned they didn't score any points in the first half, but they were able to really turn it up a notch in the second half, run the ball effectively because the game was close, and grind out a 5-point win in which Russell Wilson had the ball late in the game, and they were unable to convert a first down because of the good coverage on the back end. So the Washington win and the Seattle win, to me, along with the Bengals win, John, was walking that fine line of you don't get an extra takeaway, you don't get an extra stop. That could have easily been switched over to a loss as opposed to a W.
100%. Look, I'm with you, 100%. And the defense hasn't taken the ball away nearly as much the last 3 games. I know you tracked that. Unless, what, they have 1 takeaway in the last 3 games?
In terms of the last 3 games, correct, 1, and that was against Baltimore, and that was only because Lamar Jackson could not handle the snap.
And that was when the game was virtually over.
Correct.
So, guys, they're a big deal. They're somewhat random, and it's kind of boring to talk about them, but they're a big deal. Here's the other thing I'll say, Lance, and I think and then we'll get to your calls. I already have somebody on hold here. The thing that's most important for me, for the Giants heading into this week against Dallas, and you can put this on the offense to score more points early, or you can put it on the defense for getting stops early. However you want to look at it, I don't care. The Giants cannot be trailing by 2 scores at halftime of this game. If they are, they're going to lose. Because say what you want about the Cowboys defense, and it's problematic. They have become a lot of big plays. They can't stop the run. Go down the line. They're bad. All right? This last game against Philly, it set a record in the matchup between those 2 teams for most total yards gained in a game. What was it, 960-something or something like that?
It was a lot, yes.
It was a lot. So they're going to give up yards. But if the Giants go down 2 scores heading into the second half again in this game, the one thing the Cowboys can do is rush the passer. DeMarcus Lawrence is a good football player. Randy Gregory, since he's come back, has been
very
an
well.
excellent pass rusher. And then throw in Alden Smith. And then you have the blitzers that they use on the second level, Jalen Smith, all those guys. So if you let the Cowboys, when they go up a couple scores here, you don't have to worry about their run defense, which has been suspect this year. They've given up more than 200 rushing yards multiple times this year. And you have to throw it against them. The same thing that happened to the Giants' offensive line in the second half against Arizona and in the second half against Baltimore is going to happen again. And you're going to lose the football game. Lance, you got to be within 1 score at halftime in this game. Have the lead or just be down by 1 score or so, or this is not going to go well. Because if the Giants have to become one-dimensional again, they're going to lose. They cannot hold up in pass protection when the other team knows they're going to throw the football. Period. Stop. It's been proven too many times now for us to think otherwise. So it's really important for them to get off to a fast start here. They've gotten off to a horribly slow start their last 3 games, and it's a huge reason why they've lost those 3 games. They need to come out of the gates here and score some points early against Dallas or force a bunch of punts early against Dallas so they can be in this game and stick to their game plan. They have to. I don't care if it's 27-24 at halftime or 6-3 at halftime. It just better be a 1-score game, or the second half could become problematic once again.
Well, look at what has transpired during this 3-game losing streak. You had 17 carries against the Cardinals. You had 21 against the Browns. You had 12 carries against Baltimore. Why do I bring up those numbers, John? Well, first of all, that's 21 or less carries in the last 3 games, 2 of which you didn't even get to 20 carries. Then you look at the 4-game winning streak. These were the numbers in terms of the volume of runs. 35 against Washington, 36 against Philly, 42 against Cincy, 31 against Seattle.
It's all about game flow. It's all about game flow.
100%, because the game was relatively close in all of those contests. Now, in the Seattle game, even in the Cincinnati game, the scoring on offense wasn't overwhelming, but the game was within striking distance. So they didn't feel as if, okay, we've got to now make up for all of this lost time. Whereas the last 3 games, you're down double digits by halftime. If you don't take care of business on that opening drive at the beginning of the third quarter, all bets are off in terms of any plans of balance, any hope that you had in the second half. So, yeah, they've got to keep this game close because they have to be able to run the ball so it doesn't have to be a Daniel Jones drop back, try to survey the field. Because if that happens, this offensive line has had trouble being able to win the battles in the trenches. And as you brought up with the Dallas personnel, you could argue with the way that the Dallas front is playing, some of these fronts are more effective than some of these other teams that they've even gone up against during the losing streak because of their ability to consistently get after the quarterback and do that not just in flashes, but all throughout the course of the game. I think that's been a big turning point for the Dallas group this season. And then the other thing that has changed, as I mentioned, is the offense has done a good job protecting the football. So this Dallas defense, much different than the one that the Giants saw a few weeks ago. And then also Dallas is probably saying to itself, the offense is very different than the one that we went up against when we gave up 34 points because they clearly have not been scoring at the same rate. So it's really going to be interesting to see which team can hold up or which team can break out of some of the issues that they've been facing in recent games.
Hey, Lance, I want to just read a quote from Joe Judge to reinforce, because we've talked about this a lot the last month about game flow and, not getting behind and having to throw the ball. This is what Joe Judge said almost unasked on his conference call yesterday talking to the media. So this is what he said. I'd say the situation we have to keep ourselves out of is when you get behind and you're in that pass-only mentality. Well, now the defense can pin their ears back and really get you. If you kind of look at our past few games, when the issues have come up in pass pro, it's really been in those situations. That's against Arizona, Cleveland again yesterday. When you get into that pass-heavy zone, when you're behind, that's when the defense can finally pin their ears back. But when you can stay balanced early on, whether it's run or pass, it is a draw screen situation that whatever may come up, that keeps the defense a little bit more honest. That's when our offensive line has really played its best. When you're getting blitz 0, 3 out of 4 plays, eventually someone's going to come free. We have to make sure we avoid hits on the quarterback. So he literally has said exactly what we've been saying these last 3 weeks, which is why the Giants have to stick to this situation where you run the ball more and you stay balanced. And the whole key to that is game flow. Lance, any other tidbits you want to throw out there before we get to the calls here off the game or just heading into Dallas?
Well, the only other thing I just wanted to add to what you just said, 8 sacks for the Cardinals, 6 for the Ravens. Now, there was just 1 sack against Cleveland, but remember, that was because of the fact that Baker Mayfield was so effective in passing the football, in which that game got out of hand, and then Cleveland was just obviously running the ball to milk the clock. But the point is, to further emphasize what Joe Judge is saying, you're giving then the opportunity for the defense to get extremely comfortable. And you're becoming predictable as an offense because they know that now you're just going to drop back and throw. 41 pass attempts for Daniel Jones against the Baltimore Ravens. Now, against the Arizona Cardinals, the 2 quarterbacks combined in that game, 24 pass attempts, and McCoy had 31 pass attempts against the Browns. Whereas you go back to the winning streak, once again, the numbers fluctuated, but never did you get the sense that the Giants' offense was predictable and the defense knew what was coming. Last few games, the defense knows what's coming when the Giants are down by double digits, and that's what they need to avoid against Dallas.
And Lance, do you know how many first-half sacks the Cardinals and Ravens had in those 2 games? I do. 0. All of their sacks came in the second halves of those
when
games.
The game got out of hand.
Bingo. Yeah. Bingo. You looked at the blitz rate, and I had this in my Cover 3 article too. I think the Ravens blitzed, what was it? Shoot, I don't have it in front of me. I think it was something like 4 out of 14 plays or 3 out of 14 plays in the first half, and in the second half they blitzed on 60% of their plays. So their blitz rate nearly tripled from the first half to the second half because they knew the Giants were going to pass. It just really changes how these teams can go about their business.
Well, remember, John, Baltimore had 11 quarterback hits. They had 6 sacks, but they had 11 quarterback hits. I mean, that's a very large volume that you're getting into Daniel Jones' face and you're making him think about it, that every time he gets the snap, watch out, somebody's coming. Even after he gets rid of the ball, they could